Hi. In our last session we created a very simple entity class called applicant. Now we're going to set about testing it. We've talked to the folks that are going to be using this very simple application system, and their only requirement is that names should never be blank. So looking at our solution here, the easiest way to add test is simply to right click on an individual class and select Create Unit Test. In this case, I'm only going to do tests for first name and last name. I'm going to be using C# to write the test code, and I'm going to call this my business layer test project. I'm going to put in all the tests that I create into this one project, and it's nice that it shares the same name as my business layer. Okay. As you can see, we've got some very rough tests that can be executed here. And the key thing to remember is this attribute. Test method must come before the actual test that we'd like to run. In this case, my goal is simply to check that simply to set the name to a blank. Okay, I actually don't need a lot of these lines of code for such a simple test, so I'm just going to tidy things up a bit. Okay, so our test is we're going to create a new instance of an applicant, and we're going to attempt to assign a blank name. What should happen, according to our architect for this particular design, is that this should throw an exception. So the remainder of this code here actually should never execute, so we can eliminate it. To check to see if we do get the expected exception is quite easy. We simply use the attribute expected exception, and then we specify the type of exception that we're expecting. In this case, it's a very simple exception. Okay, so we're not doing anything fancy here. And we're also expecting, in this case, this is a test for the first name, and we're just going to say first name may not be blank. Now there's a lot more sophisticated routines that you can actually use here, but this is a very simple approach to solving the problem. Once we have the code here, it's typical that you change the name to reflect the type of test it is. So first name may not be blank test. And you can change the description up here as well. Test for a first name that is not blank. It's appropriate. To run the test, simply click anywhere within the test and use this icon up here, Run Test in the Current Context. This runs the test. And down here at the bottom you'll see, hey, wait a minute, this test fails because the expected exception was not thrown. Okay, we'll be back in a moment and we'll figure out how to actually correct this error.